So our second type of bond here is the covalent bond. And just like ionic bond, I always like to start with the name. Covalent reminds me of like co-worker, co-captain. Something is happening where you're sharing the work with somebody else. That's exactly what's happening here in a covalent bond, right? What we're seeing here is that electrons are being shared between two or more elements from the periodic table. And in order to share, that means we don't have any elements wanting to lose electrons because they want to give them away. They don't need them back. What we see here in a covalent bond is that we have two elements that want to gain electrons. So when we think about elements that want to gain, we've been seeing those as the non-metal elements. So when we have two elements that need electrons, they can work together to share and create this bond together. So one of the common nonmetals that we've been seeing happening in our bonds is hydrogen. Hydrogen is group 1. You might remember on the periodic table, it's all the way over on the left. It looks like a metal group 1 and that it would want to lose electrons. But that's not happening because it is a non-metal. It wants to gain, and not only does it want to gain, but it wants to gain 1. Because hydrogen is so small, it only has that one outer shell. So it only has room for 1 additional electron versus the 8 that we're really used to. So we have to keep an eye out for hydrogen popping up in our covalent bond. It's a common one, and we like it, but we have to keep it in mind. All right, so let's do a little practice here with our covalent bond. Let's try sulfur and chlorine. So we've got sulfur, which is part of group 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we have chlorine, which is part of group 7. I'm going around to each side before I double up so I can easily see where these atoms need a completed shared pair. We see here sulfur wants to gain 2 and chlorine wants to gain 1. So because I'm recognizing that both elements want to gain, they're both part of that non-metal category, now I know I can complete a covalent bond with these two. So I always like to start with the one that needs the most electrons in the middle. And in this example, that's the sulfur. It needs 2. So there's my sulfur. It's got 2 empty pairs. That means I want to fit a chlorine in to one of those empty pairs so that sulfur can get its full outer shell, as can chlorine, because it only needs 1 here. So I notice that I can fit a chlorine down here at the bottom, Cl, with its original 7 electrons. It still has all I did here was move that shared pair to the top of chlorine so it would fit nicely into the sulfur incomplete pair. So now chlorine has access to all 8 electrons. It's 7 originals plus borrowing this one from sulfur. So chlorine has what it needs to be full and complete. Sulfur is not quite yet there. It needs an additional electron to reach that full outer shell. So I'm going to plug in another chlorine here. Again, bringing it 7 original electrons. Now sharing 1 with the sulfur, it has everything it wants to be in that complete and stable state. Now looking at sulfur, both of its shared pairs are now filled in. I can also circle this one up, saying, yep, it has exactly what it needs. Finally, we create something called the stick model for our covalent bonds. It's essentially this diagram, really simplified. Two things go into our stick diagram: the element name and the shared pairs. And the shared pairs are just replaced with a stick. So I need 1, 2 sticks or connectors showing that these elements are linked. Now when I do this, I want to create my stick diagram to look just like this. So I have a sulfur sharing a pair with chlorine to the left and sharing a pair with chlorine to the bottom. So I have a brand new element name of SCl2. So with a covalent bond, we're focused in on 2 or more elements that need electrons. Because they both need something, they end up sharing electrons, and we're seeing a pattern of this happening with non-metals. To create the bond, I start out with my Lewis dot, figure out where those empty pairs are, and start plugging in those elements like a puzzle. Whoops. So here's our learning target. Looking at our keywords should be easy to plug those in to your explanation up here of a covalent bond, highlighting them as you go. And then we have a covalent bond to complete, nitrogen and bromine. So just like we've practiced in our notes, start with Lewis dot, show the circled shared pairs, the stick diagram, and the new element name.